Primary school teachers often dread the day they have to teach their pupils about the use of semicolons and colons. Not because it's a particularly hard lesson, but because for the next few weeks, every sentence the children will write will contain a semicolon, a colon, or often both. Such is their allure. You don't need to use this punctuation in your writing. They're not essential in the same way as commas and full stops are, but they can be useful. However, if you do use them, make sure you know how to use them. So in this lesson, we'll look separately at the semicolon and the colon, emphasising along the way that not only do they look different, they are also used for different purposes. First, the semicolon. Semicolons should be used to separate two parts of a sentence that are closely related in thought. Not so closely related that a comma will do to separate them, but too close to be made into two sentences. Let's look at some examples. She became a lawyer, semicolon, I became a doctor. The shops were busy, semicolon, the shelves were empty. To err is human, to forgive divine. In each of the examples, you should note that either side of the semicolon there is an independent clause. Remember, a clause that could exist on its own as a sentence with a subject and a verb. Also, both sides are roughly balanced in terms of importance and length. In contrast, the colon is used for quite a different purpose. The English usage book by Fowler notes the following. The colon has acquired a special function, that of delivering the goods that have been invoiced in the preceding words. Rather a colourful way of saying it, but what does it actually mean? Well, in practice, colons often serve to separate some form of introduction from its conclusion, and it's most often used to introduce examples. So let's look at some examples of those. September 11th will always be associated with one thing, colon, terrorism. There we have effectively made the promise in the first part of the sentence that we're going to tell you about what the one thing that this date is always associated with. And then after the colon, we deliver on it. We tell you what the word is. Several kinds of apples were on sale, colon, red, green and yellow. Again, the first part of the sentence is telling you to expect an explanation, to be given a description of those apples. And after the colon, that's exactly what we get. The appearance of the room could be summed up in two words, dirty and shabby. Again, we're making the promise to the reader that there are two words we could use here to summarise the appearance of this room, and then we're going to deliver on them. And after the colon, there they appear. Unlike semicolons, colons don't separate independent clauses. Look at those examples. What's on either side of them is not an independent clause. For example, in the first one, we have one single word, terrorism. In the second example, we have just red, green and yellow. These could not be sentences in their own right. Also, what's on either side of the colon is often quite unequal. With the semicolon, there was a balance on either side of the semicolon, but with the colon, it's often very unequal in terms of importance and in weight. You will also find colons used in several other ways. Here are some examples. You will find colons inserted between the numbers when we're indicating a ratio or a proportion. If we want to say 5 to 1, we may write that with the number 5, a colon, and then the number 1. Also, if we're expressing a time with the 24-hour clock, we will often separate the hours and the minutes with a colon. So for 1:30 in the afternoon, we might write 13:30. And one other example. In American English, at the start of a letter, we might use a colon to separate the salutation from the rest of the letter. For example, Dear Mr. Smith, colon. In this lesson, we've looked at two punctuation marks that cause a lot of people a problem. Sometimes because they think they're interchangeable, and sometimes because they simply don't know what they're for. Do remember that there are usually alternative, simpler strategies than using semicolons and colons, and if you are struggling with them, best to leave them out. On that note, let's give the last word to the science fiction writer Kurt Vonnegut. He advised, do not use semicolons. They are transvestite hermaphrodites representing absolutely nothing. All they do is show you've been to college. If you would like to find out more about writing, why not subscribe to this channel? Or take a look at 2 of my books, which were written specially for those who find it difficult. Also, you can keep in touch on Twitter and follow my blog, The Business of Discovery. I look forward to seeing you next time.